To invent is to dream. It's that human drive to see the world not for what it is, but for what it could be. A dream of progress, maybe fame, or of changing everything with one brilliant idea. But what happens when that dream twists into a nightmare? What happens when a creation, born from genius and ambition, turns on its creator? For a handful of inventors throughout history, their greatest achievement was also their last. These are the stories of brilliant minds taken by their own work, a chilling look at the moments when innovation demanded the ultimate price. Consider Paris, February 4th, 1912. A crowd of journalists and onlookers gathers at the foot of the Eiffel Tower, cameras poised. High above, on the first deck, 187 feet from the frozen ground, a tailor named Franz Reichelt prepares to make history. He's wearing his own invention, a wearable parachute suit he's convinced will save the lives of early aviators. His friends and the tower guards plead with him not to jump. He'd promised the authorities he would use a dummy, partly because his previous tests with them hadn't worked, proving inconclusive at best. But Reichelt is certain. He smiles, adjusts the device, and with a final "see you soon," he leaps into the Parisian sky. For a few terrifying seconds, he is a symbol of human ambition. And then his invention fails. The parachute suit collapses around him, and he plummets to the ground. His dream of flight ends in a horrifying fatal impact. Franz Reichelt's story is tragic and iconic, but he is far from the only one. History is filled with brilliant, ambitious, and sometimes reckless inventors who paid the ultimate price for their ideas. They were pioneers of aviation, chemistry, and engineering who sought to conquer the skies, the seas, and even their own physical limitations. But in their quest for greatness, they fatally underestimated the dangers of what they were creating. From bizarre contraptions to world-altering chemicals, their stories are a powerful and often ironic reminder that the path to innovation can be a dangerous one. Today we're counting down the top inventions that killed their inventor. Our first story is one of profound and tragic irony. It involves a man whose creations had a more destructive global impact than perhaps any other single person in history. His name was Thomas Midgley Jr., a gifted American chemist and engineer. His life's work is a chilling example of unintended consequences, but his death was a direct result of his own inventive mind. In the 1920s, Midgley solved a major problem for the auto industry: engine knocking. He discovered that adding a compound called tetraethol lead to gasoline made engines run smoothly. Leaded gasoline was born. The problem, already known at the time, was that lead is a potent neurotoxin. Factory workers producing the additive started falling ill, suffering hallucinations and madness in what was dubbed the House of Butterflies. Midgley himself got lead poisoning and had to take time off, yet he publicly dismissed the dangers, famously washing his hands in the substance at a press conference to prove its supposed safety. But Midgley wasn't done. He then turned to refrigeration. Early refrigerators used toxic flammable gases that could leak and kill families in their sleep. Midgley wanted a safe alternative. In just 3 days, he and his team landed on a new compound, the world's first chlorofluorocarbon, CFC. Marketed as Freon, it was a miracle chemical, non-toxic and non-flammable. Again, Midgley put on a show, inhaling a lungful of Freon and blowing out a candle to prove it was harmless. He was showered with awards for his work, even becoming president of the American Chemical Society. It took decades before the true cost became clear. Leaded gasoline caused global health crises, while CFCs were destroying the Earth's ozone layer. The final irony, however, came at the end of his life. In 1940, at age 51, Midgley contracted polio, which left him severely disabled. An inventor to the end, he refused to be dependent on others. He designed and built an elaborate system of motorized ropes and pulleys over his bed, his final invention designed to help him sit up. In November 1944, at 55 years old, he became entangled in the very ropes he had created to grant him a measure of freedom. The mechanism designed to preserve his independence was the thing that killed him, strangling him in his bed. A bizarre and tragic end for a man whose life's work was a monument to the double-edged sword of invention. Not all dangers are sudden and explosive. Some are silent, insidious, and they build over time. No story illustrates this better than that of Marie Curie, one of history's most celebrated scientists. Born Maria Skłodowska in Poland, her pioneering research into what she termed radioactivity would change the world and earn her Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific fields, an achievement that remains unique to this day. Working alongside her husband Pierre, she plunged into the study of uranium rays. In difficult conditions, they conducted painstaking research that led to the discovery of 2 new elements in 1898, polonium, named for her native Poland, and radium. They were mesmerized by radium. It glowed in the dark with a soft, ethereal light, and seemed to produce energy from nothing. Were the profound dangers of the materials they handled day after day. They often worked with raw, inflamed hands and suffered from chronic illness, which we now recognize as symptoms of radiation sickness. Marie would carry test tubes of radium in her pockets, fascinated by the beautiful blue-green light they emitted. After Pierre's tragic death in a street accident, Marie continued her work with even greater intensity, developing mobile X-ray units called petites curies. To help treat soldiers in World War I, she was a global icon of science, but her body was absorbing a fatal dose of the very element she discovered. On July 4, 1934, Marie Curie died from aplastic anemia, a disease of the bone marrow brought on by her years of exposure to radiation.
Oh.
Her life's work was literally killing her. To this day, her notebooks from the 1890s are so radioactive, they have to be stored in light-lined boxes. When her body was exhumed in 1995 to be moved to the in Paris, it was found to be so radioactive she had been buried in a coffin lined with nearly an inch of lead. Curie's fate was shared by others, who commercialized her discovery. Sabine Arnold von Soucek, an inventor, was captivated by radium's glow and created a radium-based paint for luminous watch dials. He, too, would succumb to the invisible poison of his creation, dying of aplastic anemia in 1928, the same disease that would claim Curie and many of the radium girls. The factory workers who had painted the dials and ingested deadly amounts of radium. Both Curie and von Soucek were pioneers in a field whose dangers were just beginning to be understood, killed by the very glow that had so enchanted them. The dream of a flying car is almost as old as the car itself, a symbol of ultimate freedom. For Henry Smolinski, an aeronautical engineer who'd worked on military jets, it was a concrete challenge. In 1971, he founded Advanced Vehicle Engineers, or AV, with one audacious goal: to build a practical roadable aircraft. His creation was the Ave Mizar, a wonderfully strange hybrid born from marrying a Ford Pinto to a Cessna Skymaster airplane. The concept was simple. You drive the Pinto to an airport, attach the wings, tail, and a rear-mounted engine. The car's own steering wheel and pedals were adapted to control the plane in flight. After landing, you'd just detach the airframe and drive away. It was the kind of thing you'd see in a James Bond movie and, in fact, the Mizar was slated to appear in an upcoming Bond film. By mid-1973, prototypes were flying, and the Mizar was generating serious buzz. But there were warning signs. During one test flight, a critical weld on a wing strut failed right after takeoff. The skilled test pilot managed to land it straight ahead in a bean field, narrowly averting disaster. Despite the close call, development pushed on. On September 11, 1973, Smolinski was preparing for another test flight near Camarillo, California. His primary pilot was unavailable, so Smolinski, a capable engineer but less experienced pilot, decided to fly it himself, along with his partner, Harold Blake. Just 2 minutes after takeoff, air traffic controllers watched in horror as the Mizar's right wing folded. The aircraft twisted violently and plunged to the ground, erupting in a column of black smoke. Both Smolinski and Blake were killed instantly. The National Transportation Safety Board investigation later identified the cause: the failure of that same critical wing strut attachment. Bad welds that had nearly caused a disaster before had this time proved fatal. The dream of the flying car died that day, right along with its inventor. Not all inventors are driven by scientific discovery. Some are driven by the roar of the crowd, by the thrill of defying death. Such was the case of Karel Soucek, a Czech-born Canadian stuntman whose inventive spirit was dedicated to the art of survival. In 1984, Soucek became internationally famous by doing something most would consider insane. He went over Niagara Falls in a barrel of his own design and survived. This was no ordinary barrel. It was a custom-built, shock-absorbent capsule he'd spent $15,000 on. meticulously designed to stay upright and cushion the blow. He emerged from the river battered but alive, an instant celebrity. The success only fueled his ambition. To fund a museum for his exploits, he planned an even bigger stunt. On January 19, 1985, he stood before a crowd of 35,000 people inside the Houston Astrodome. His new invention, another specially designed barrel, was to be dropped from the rafters, 180 feet above the floor, into a small water tank just 12 feet wide. The legendary stuntman Eiffel Tower, who was there, reportedly tried to talk Soucek out of it, calling it the most dangerous stunt I've ever seen. But Soucek wouldn't be deterred. As he was enclosed in the barrel high above the crowd, there were problems. The barrel began spinning erratically. As it dropped, it was already off balance. It missed the center of the water tank, clipping the rim with devastating force. The crowd applauded, thinking it was all part of the act. But then a hush fell. Paramedics rushed in and cut Soucek from the mangled barrel. He was still alive, but his chest and abdomen were crushed and his skull was fractured. He died from his injuries a short time later, while the thrill show was still going on. Karel Soucek, the man who conquered Niagara Falls, was killed by the same invention and ambition that had made him famous, a tragic victim of his own death-defying spectacle. The drive to innovate didn't die in the age of steam or early aviation. It continues today, pushing boundaries in the most extreme environments on Earth and under it. This brings us to our most recent, and perhaps most high-profile tragedy, that of Stockton Rush and the Titan submersible. Stockton Rush was the CEO of OceanGate Expeditions, a company aiming to make deep ocean exploration accessible. His crowning invention was the Titan, a novel submersible designed to take paying customers 12,500 feet down to the wreck of the RMS Titanic, like most deep-sea vehicles, which use a solid metal sphere. The Titan had a radical design, a 5-inch thick carbon fiber hull, a material prized in aerospace, but largely unproven for withstanding deep-sea pressures. Rush was a vocal champion of his innovative approach, and often dismissed safety regulations as something that just stifled progress. The passenger waiver for the Titan made the risks chillingly clear, noting the vessel has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body, and that the trip could result in physical injury or death. And there were other warnings. Industry experts had raised serious concerns about the experimental design. During a dive in 2022, sensors reportedly recorded sounds that were later suggested to be the carbon fiber hull beginning to break down. On June 18, 2023, Stockton Rush piloted the Titan on a dive to the Titanic with 4 other passengers. So about an hour and 45 minutes into the descent, all communication was lost. A massive international search and rescue operation captured the world's attention for days. The search ended when a debris field was found near the bow of the Titanic. The U.S. Coast Guard confirmed the Titan had suffered a catastrophic implosion, the immense pressure instantly crushing the vessel and killing everyone on board. Stockton Rush had died inside his own creation, a victim of his ambition to push technological boundaries in one of the most unforgiving environments on the planet. His story is a stark, modern reminder that even with today's technology, the cost of innovation can be just as high as it was a century ago. The stories of these inventors serve as cautionary tales of ambition, genius, and the ultimate sacrifice. They remind us that for every celebrated breakthrough, there are risks. If you find these moments from the past as fascinating as we do, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on so you don't miss our next story. From the skies above Paris to the dark floor of the Atlantic, the pattern is tragically clear. Whether it was the pursuit of flight, the allure of a glowing element, or the dream of exploring the deep, these inventors shared an unbreakable belief in their creations. They were so confident they bet their lives on their work, a bet they ultimately lost. Their legacies are a somber counterpoint to the triumphs of technology we so often celebrate, and a powerful reminder that the line between a brilliant breakthrough and a fatal mistake can be incredibly thin. What do you think? Were these inventors reckless? Or were they courageous pioneers who simply miscalculated the risk? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.